Hey, how are you? Ready for that after lunch nap? I think that's the next session, probably. I'm excited to be here. This is the first time I speak at a proper developers conference. I've spoken at quite a few design conferences, but this is new to me here, so I'm really excited. So welcome to my introductory lesson on Visual Basic. I just love building programs in Visual Basic. We'd say programs for these things. Actually, I used to love it 20 years ago. I have very fond memories of this. This was how I learned how to build programs. If I recall correctly, there was no Stack Overflow back in 1996. And taking this screenshot was not easy, by the way. I had to install Visual Basic on my Siemens Nixdorf laptop first. Unfortunately, it has no USB, no networking, and no CD burner, so getting the screenshot off of that was hard, also because the file size was larger of the screenshot, was larger than a floppy disk. So I had to convert it first and then put it on a floppy disk, and now, yeah, here it is. By the way, how much I love this keyboard, you won't believe it, but it's almost as thick as my current laptop, so I'm not complaining, right? This is the 1995 equivalent of an Xcode download right here. This is the standard edition for hobbyists, the cheap one for 249 Deutschmarks. The professional edition was even more expensive than that. Yeah, the 1990s Microsoft. You remember Microsoft? Anyone? Okay. So I found this on the back of the packaging. It's the German edition, obviously. Here's a fun detail. Apparently in the 1990s, we Germans called buttons Befehlsschaltflächen. So the text actually reads, with buttons like print report or quit, you can start or end an action. This is how you can create your own professional-looking toolbars. So actually, programming Visual Basic got me hooked on designing user interfaces. It was fascinating to me. I could build real programs with professional-looking Befehlsschaltflächen. And now, 20 years later, I'm making a living as a professional-looking apps-making person. When I tell other people that I make apps, there are only two possible reactions. One of them is, oh, I see. Kind of like, sorry for you. The other one is, oh, I have a great idea for an app. It's like, you heard that before, okay. Thanks. So if anyone wants me to be more specific with my job title, I tell them this now. I say I'm a user interface typographer. What does that mean? It means I put text on buttons, on Befehlsschaltflächen. Or to be more specific, I specialize in typography for user interfaces. Typography is a pretty old profession. It means arranging text, giving text the appropriate shape for the purpose and the content and the audience. So why is this relevant for user interfaces? This is why it's important. Typography is everywhere. Text is everywhere. It's all over the place in user interfaces. It's not just another ingredient, it actually is the core of the user interface. Text is what makes these complex digital interfaces understandable and usable. Right? Imagine what happened if we removed the text from this. Or even from this. Suddenly it changed from hard to use to impossible to use just because we removed the text. And so the most important thing in user interface design is actually the text. And typography is user interface design for text. The problem is most people don't see the text, they see the meaning behind the text. Because that's how text works, that's how reading works. Most people don't notice the shape, they only notice the shape of text when it's very hard to read. Or if they have the feeling that something's wrong and they can't quite put their finger on it. So that's why there are people who specialize in this, and they're called typographers, and they can actually see the shape and not just the G behind it, not just the meaning. It's only a few years old what we're doing in here. It's user interface design, programming, that's all kind of new stuff. And typography has been around for centuries, and there's an evolution, iteration, experience, and knowledge, and something we can all learn from this and put into our user interfaces. So why is it that traditional typographers have avoided designing for screens for the past 20 years? You know, you don't have the team like 10 developers, 10 designers, 10 typographers for some reason. Why didn't the best typographers switch from paper to screens 20 years ago? I believe that typographers were shocked when they first saw these websites. They were like, whoa, this looks like graphic design hadn't even been invented yet in 1994. This is the first Microsoft website. And who can blame the typographers for believing that they could never do anything as beautiful as paper typography? And then, of course, you don't want to read Harry Potter on this blurry, flickering monitor on a computer tisch. I think it's computer desk in English. And, of course, the book as a reading interface is way better than the thing on the left. But now we have these devices, so when we just talk about text and reading on screens, we should actually be talking about this thing on the right that is, you know, has a better quality in some cases than books. And we should start treating it as a first-class reading platform, not just typographers. We should all think about it as a reading platform. Because what people do on the subway when you see people fiddling with their phones, they're either playing a game or reading something. So what is it exactly that a typographer does? Pick fonts all day, call it a day? No, not really. Making text easy to process for human eyes and human brains. Sounds kind of familiar. That's what we are doing in user interface design, and typography has been doing that for centuries. So to introduce you to the topic in general, let's talk about numbers, number formatting. There are so many apps and services around numbers, but you know, financial apps and stuff. But in most of the apps I've seen, the numbers are hard to read, and that's insane because when you're making a financial app, for example, you're actually making a number viewing app. This is the uninspired way of, from my German bank's website, of an example of how not to do it. There's no love in this design. It's really sad. There's an S for the negative numbers. The only German bookkeepers understand that it's saldo, and it's a negative number. Look at this 3-pixel misalignment. That really drives me crazy. So a few years ago, I worked on a banking application for the German market called Money Money. Yeah, oh, thank you. This is the first time this ever happened at a conference for this product. Weird people. This is the original design from 2011, and UI fashion has obviously moved on. Textures and shadows are now no longer en vogue. But typography is timeless. So let me just show you how much thought we put into formatting the numbers here. This is, you know, what the bank does, maybe. Or if it comes straight from the database, that's the number you kind of get in your programming language. And this is what my bank does here. So they add the German decimal separator, the comma instead of the period, and then they append an S, and then they call it a day. So let's get rid of the S and add a minus. And as you probably know, or maybe not, this is not a minus, this is a hyphen. This is a proper minus. And the other one is only for programming and for, you know, hyphen. It even has a different Unicode. There's you know, let's add a 1,000 separator. In German, that's a period. And in the US, you would do it differently, but that's something that the operating system does for you. So the correct locale, you just apply it to the number, and then you have the correctly localized version. How about we make the currency a little smaller? Because it's always there, and it's going to be the same for all my numbers. I only have euros. And I'm not really happy with the font choice, because Helvetica is kind of hard to read. So let's use this typeface called Novel. It has more open shapes that are easier to read. Those serifs on the small version are a little too fragile, so let's add the sans serif version of that typeface. For the currency, make it a little bolder, emphasize the important part and make it bolder too, and also maybe mute the parts that are not so interesting. Now you say that's a lot of formatting, right? Wait, I'm not finished. Here is more. So let's scoot this up a little bit. And then a little more tracking for the currency, a little more tracking for the number itself. And now I'm happy. Now I can finally read this properly. I think it was worth the extra effort. By the way, some banks and some financial applications do this, but the plus actually doesn't help because the intentions are good, but leaving out the plus actually emphasizes the difference better. And also, there's a thing called red-green blindness, color blindness, so not a good idea. And again, this is nothing spectacular. This is just typografisches Handwerk. This is typographic craftsmanship. I love reading Wikipedia. Here's another example. Do you guys read Wikipedia? Probably. Everyone does, right? Yeah, everyone. I read it too much, way too much. And the typography is really not that great. You know, you start over there on the left. Oh, this looks horrible on the wall. Anyway, there's actual text on that slide. But still, 3 meters or 5 meters of line length are not good to read, because over here, when you end up at the end of that line, it takes a long time to travel back to the next line. And I mostly read Wikipedia on my iPhone and my iPad, so I don't read it much on the computer anyway. And the website is not that great. The app, the official app, doesn't really make me happy, so I decided to build the Wikipedia reading app of my dreams. It's called V. V, because in German we say Wikipedia, so V for Wikipedia is what it's called. And my goal was to create a Wikipedia reader app that has the best possible reading experience on all of these devices. Yes, even the one on the left over there. Showcase for good typography with no excuses for bad typography. Let me show you how it looks. So when you open the app, you can see what articles are currently popular on Wikipedia. That's just the number of views. You can, of course, also search for articles like Friedrich Schiller. Open the table of contents maybe, or scroll down a little bit. Open the table of contents, jump to a location within the text, zoom a picture. But my favorite feature is actually that the text is nice to read, which is not the case for many reading apps on the App Store. And of course, good typography starts with a good typeface, and it's especially important when you make a long-form reading app, right? Obviously. But my process for the whole app design was quite different from how things are normally done in the industry. I think, I don't know, probably, you tell me afterwards. Because the fonts I would use, the typefaces I would use, were one of the first things I decided on when designing the app. And you could say I had a typography-driven design process, or development process. And every aspect of the app was considered from a typographer's point of view, and the design and the development happened at the same time, which was, there was no planning involved because it was just me, which is kind of helpful sometimes to get a better result than with 20 people or 50 people arguing. And since releasing, I've been constantly tweaking the app and improving typographic details, like, for example, added a night mode. And it does sound stupid, but reading a bit of Wikipedia on your wrist can be quite nice if it's done right, especially in combination with handoff. So you can continue reading on your phone. I have 12 quality fonts in my app, 4 styles of Diogenes, commercial font, 4 styles of Comet for like secondary stuff, tables, UI controls. I have 4 styles of Camingo Code, pretty nice free monospace font that I use for coding as well. Highly recommended. And, sorry, now it's showing, yeah. And choosing typefaces is important and good, but choosing a typeface is just the beginning. It's like picking the colors for a painting. For example, a good body text reading experience is not just the typeface or the font, it's also the text size, the horizontal rhythm, the line length, and the vertical rhythm. And these are the 4 magic square parameters. That's what German typographers call that, magisches Quadrat, for Lesetypografie. And it's just 4 parameters that you have to get right. It sounds easy. It's really quick, I'll show you. This is unformatted text, or rather it's not unformatted text, it's just badly formatted. Let's choose a typeface and then adjust the text size, the horizontal rhythm, the line length, the vertical rhythm, and you're done. Normally it takes longer than this, but this is, if you get all of these things right for reading, then, and plus the font choice, of course, then you have a good reading experience. And it's nothing spectacular, again, it's just typographic craftsmanship, and it's also something that can be easily documented in mock-ups and design specs. But every typographer wants full control of every detail, so not just, you know, the stuff I've just shown, but also the stuff they used to, the things they used to do manually in traditional typesetting. So let's say content-dependent layout optimizations, because you don't know what content you're going to get and you want to react to how much text there is on one line and how much there is on the next. There are typographic tweaks that the typographer might want to do. I'm going to show you examples for this in a minute. And also neat line breaks, like really at the right places, the right line breaks, especially in headlines. These things are really hard to put into a design spec because they're actually rules. These typographic requirements are rules, so they're inherently algorithms. And the typography lives in the code behind the surface. That's what I tell my typographer and designer friends. It's not, you know, the rules for typography sit in the code. I'm going to show you a few examples from my app. This is how the title, the header looks like. Actually, that's not what it looks like, because that's what it would look like if I didn't care. So I add the line break in the right place. How do I do this? I always add a line break after a colon in every title. To make it look a little nicer, I put everything after the colon into an italic font. And then I do this. I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to zoom in a little. So my algorithm also adds a tiny little hair space before the colon, because that's what you do. And of course, it's, you know, I don't have to tell you how to do this stuff, but there's a Unicode for this thin space. It's not a lot of work, but you know, you have to know how to do these things, and you have to know that you do them in the first place. So the beautiful thing is, once I've written this code, it of course can handle all articles, all other articles on Wikipedia automatically, even in languages that I don't read. I'm going to show you another example, a more complex one. What do we do with long titles like this that don't fit the header? Luckily, there's a pattern that I saw in these article titles that a lot of them start with list of or a localized version of list of, and they end with something in brackets. So I could just grab them with here's a simplified version of the regular expression I use. You could just use a regular expression and then parse these parts and then find all of these parts in all Wikipedia articles and format them the way I want it. So instead of this, I get this, which looks nicer. And the beauty is, again, write the code once, apply it to all millions and billions of articles. That's how I, you know, tell my designer friends. You guys know that. So this is the location search. You can find out what places are around here. But what I actually wanted to show you here is this detail, because of course I use a proper thin space here, because that's what you do. You put a thin space between the number and the unit. And of course, it's not rocket science. This is what it looks like in Swift, one line of code. But you need to know about it, how to do it, in order to make it, to do it. So I don't think many apps really pay attention to this stuff, but many books do. All traditional books do, by the way. So this stuff is called microtypography, and this is, you know, using the right spaces, but a lot of other things as well. And I'm obsessed with microtypography. So let's have a look at a couple of fun, pretty famous, familiar iOS apps of Spiegel Online, The Guardian, and the BBC. These are random choices. I could have picked many others. They have wrong double quotation marks, they have wrong single quotation marks, and they have wrong apostrophes. This would never happen in printed newspapers. Buy any newspaper now, printed one, you will never find this, because these are not correct quotation marks. It's my mission to explain this to my generation and to the younger generation. These are not correct. These are the correct ones for English, and also these are the correct ones for German. And on the upper right, that's what they use in Finland, and right in the middle, Poland. Bottom right, Switzerland. There are so many great local traditions, and still people use this. You know, it triggers a syntax error in my brain because it's the same thing. Seriously, I can't read anything that has these. I don't think you should clap for that. That's kind of, thank you. And that's just because the correct ones are not on the keyboard. You need complicated keyboard shortcuts to type them correctly. And also for the apostrophe, this one is the correct one, only this one. So why is that? I think the reason is that our modern laptops are actually just a typewriter attached to a very fancy computer in a small package, because the keyboard we have now is almost the same as the one we had 150 years ago. And typewriters had identical opening and closing quotes because there was a limited space on the keyboard. Everything you could save there was valuable. But what's going on over there? What's going on in the upper left? There's a crazy B instead of the 1. And also, there's no 0. So how did people then write letters without 1s and 0s? That was before computers, maybe that's why. But this is how you did it. You just typed a lowercase l to get a 1, and you typed an uppercase 0 to get O to get a 0. And that was because there were hammers in these things, and they had to, you couldn't have an infinite amount of hammers. So it was an engineering-driven design decision 150 years ago. I imagine we would still have to press the lowercase l to get a 1. That's how I feel about the typewriter quotation marks on this device. So let's look at the quotation marks on Wikipedia. Of course, they're all wrong. If you fix them, by the way, they will fix them back to the wrong ones, because it's a convention. Convention, not convention. But of course, I did something about this, because I wouldn't be able to ship my app with this. So this is what it looks like in my app, way better. Did I edit every single article? No, I couldn't, because, they wouldn't let me. And so I made a piece of code that actually fixes the quotes and apostrophes on page load on the fly. And I even made a cute logo for it. It's called Typographizer. And it's a Swift module that takes dumb quotes and eats them and then spits out the correct ones. And the good news is you can put it in your apps too and make them happy, because it's on GitHub. I'll show you in a minute. And it will also use the correct localized versions for the language code you pass in. So you get the nice German ones, or even complicated stuff like this. Doesn't always work, but if you're a computer scientist, this is the first time I've written a tokenizer. You can just get this stuff on, this is how you use it. Typographized language, done. It works on all Apple platforms. And if you're a computer scientist, you can download everything, rewrite it, and then file a pull request, and I'll be happy to, replace it with your 100 times or 8,000 times faster version of my Swift code. This thing also comes with testing, little macOS testing app, and it ignores everything in HTML, so you can throw HTML at it and not break anything, code blocks, because code is the context where it's actually legal to have these. The documentation is almost as long as the source code. I kind of got carried away with this, explaining, all the different language versions, and but it's actually just one line of code for you if you download it. I even got this fancy domain. I don't know why it wasn't taken. Typographizer.com. And there's really no excuse. If we have a Swift app and that shows typewriter quotes, there's no excuse for it anymore. As I said, I love neat line breaks. And if I look at this, it really hurts my eyes to see a very long line and then a stray word in the next line. So what I want to do is add line breaks before the second last word, sometimes. So this is something a traditional typographer would do manually in a printed book. I just fixed it with a little bit of code. Excuse the German slide here, but it doesn't really matter for the sake. How I do it is I add a non-breaking space between the second last and the last word. My designer friends always think I'm shitting them when I show them that this is actually is a thing in computer science, because just regex looks like I just banged my head on the keyboard, which I do sometimes when I write regex, right? So what this thing does is it looks if the last word is between 1 and 16 characters, and the second last is between 1 and 8 characters, and only then does it add a non-breaking space. The last feature I'd like to show off here is the inline search. I swapped the arrangement of controls on the search bar, by the way. It's the other way around in Safari, and it drives me crazy, because you want to have if you're right-handed, you want to have the up and down arrows on the right and the destructive action on the left. But anyway, this is not what I wanted to show. I wanted to talk about the numbers here, because I don't use the lining standard figures numbers included in this font, but I used smaller numbers that fit better in the context. But where did I get these numbers? It turns out that in many commercial, that means paid for fonts, not Google free fonts, that you get a variety of different stylistic alternatives in the font. They're all within that font. And in order to get them out, all you have to do is switch a toggle in the font for a certain feature. So, for example, if I wanted the ones on the bottom, I would switch on small caps and monospace figures, because I want them to be to have equal width. And then what I get is this, and it's pretty easy, straightforward to do in Swift. But I don't think we should dive into the code now. You just watch the 2016 WWDC session on typography. It's great, and it tells you all about the UI font descriptor and UI font feature type identifier key and all that stuff. I think it's time to stop thinking of design as something that's isolated from development. I'm really tired of this discussion. It is already happening in UI design that designers build prototypes with code. And I believe that typography, design as well, but especially typography, has to happen at all of these stages. As I've just shown you, it's not possible to specify all this beforehand in a mock-up and draw pictures of it in Sketch. And students still often ask me, do I really have to learn how to code if I just want to design beautiful things? Then I tell them, imagine you had designed this button, and the developer comes back with this, saying, it's blue, it has a drop shadow, Arial font, just what you requested, and now I'm going to leave. And then you can either be the designer who starts begging, or you can just fix it. Right? Thank you. But it's not just about fixing production code that's, that was different in the mock-up. It's also that designing with code is inspiring, and designing with code is necessary for good design, for good typography, and for better apps. Thank you. I apologize for this cliche slide, but I do have one more thing. I think I can pull this off at an iOS development thing. So I love the Wikipedia API. It's wonderful. I had a lot of fun figuring out how it works. And seriously, it did take a lot of time to figure it out. And I got kind of frustrated many times, and I did it wrong in many ways. And it took like 2 years overall now to finally have it in place. And today I'm open sourcing my Apps Complete Wikipedia API client. You can also download this, rewrite it, and then submit a pull request, because I'm not a computer scientist. But it does everything my app does, and the app works and sells pretty well. So it does all these things for you: download articles, search, geo search, most read articles. Thanks. And you can get it here. And I'm just waiting for Wikipedia's lawyer to tell me not to use their name in my product. But it's not a product, it's MIT license, so it's free. And open source and totally in the spirit of the community. So to test the thing in a brand new app, I've started building my own tvOS version from scratch, just to try my own API, because I want to test what I'm giving other people to work with. If you want to beat me to market, download it tonight and get started, but I'm not really sure if I actually want to be in that market. I don't know. I don't know if you guys have any experience with tvOS, but we'll see. So, thank you.